Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name's Simon Buick, and I'm one half of Virtual Noir at the Bar and Bay Tales. Unfortunately, my colleague Vic Watson is unable to join us tonight, but we'd like to wish her and her family all of the best. I'm going to be talking to CL Taylor tonight about her work, and in particular on the launch of the paperback today about Her Last Holiday, available now from Avon Books. We're going to be offering prizes to some lucky winners, so please keep watching and listening for details on how to enter a little later in the show. We're also going to be joined by two very special guests who have their own questions for Callie. Mark Edwards, author of Here to Stay, Follow You Home in the Hollows, among others, and Claire Douglas, author of The Sisters, Do Not Disturb, and The Couplet Number 9. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and I'll do my best to get to as many of them as I can. Now, normally, I'm in the background doing the techie bit. Tonight, I'm doing the interview as well, so bear with us. There may be a few little gremlins in the work. But now, without any further ado, a little about our guest of honor tonight. C.L. Taylor was born in Worcester and spent her early years living in various army camps in the UK and Germany. She studied psychology at the University of Northumbria, great place to go, and went on to forge a career in instructional design and e-learning before leaving to write full-time in 2014. She started writing short stories in 2005 and was published widely in literary and women's magazines. She also won several short story competitions. In 2009-2011, her romantic comedy novels as Callie Taylor were published by Orion and translated into 14 languages. Whilst on maternity leave with her son, Callie had an idea for a psychological thriller and turned to crime. Since then, she's published 8 psychological thrillers and 2 young adult novels, and is no stranger to the Sunday Times bestseller charts, and more recently was a Richard and Judy book club pick for her first hardback, Sleep. So, welcome, C.L. Taylor.
Thank you very much, Simon, and thank you everybody who's turned up to watch. I've been seeing the little chat icon at the bottom show a lot of familiar names and some new ones. So thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining us. And should we give a little secret out while we start? We had a few little behind the scenes tech issues there. So bless her, Callie was nearly the only one that didn't make it here tonight, which kind of would have been a bit of a downfall. But so congratulations for the paperback launch. I saw it in Morrison's today.
Oh, nice. Good stuff.
As I was going to get my lunch. So my first question for you is, can you remember the first time you saw one of your books in public?
Oh gosh, yeah. So this was back in 2009, and my proper debut, the first book I'd ever had published was Heaven Can Wait, excuse me, which was a romantic comedy with a supernatural twist. And I saw it in W.H. Smith's, and it was the most magical feeling for something that was just in your head when you're, sitting alone in your bedroom typing after work and at the weekends. Suddenly, for it to be a proper book on a shelf, it was a really amazing moment.
Did you buy a copy?
No. I did hover to see if anybody would pick it up, but no, I didn't stay there that long.
You didn't stand there and go, this looks really good.
Yeah, you should buy this.
And my follow-up question, I guess, is do you still get a thrill like that now after so many books?
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing beats that feeling of, whether it's walking into W.H. Smith's or Waterstones or the supermarkets and seeing your book amongst so many big names. Because that's the thing, that even though I've written 13 books now, I still have that imposter syndrome where I'm like, oh my God, my books are up there with, John Grisham and Mark Billingham and Val McDermott. And, I still feel like the newbie, even though this one, Heaven Can Wait, is number 8 of all my crime novels.
Wow. Let's hope for the rest of us, yeah. So for those in the audience who maybe haven't read the book, could you maybe tell us a little bit about Her Last Holiday?
Yeah, sure. So I describe it as a missing sister mystery. Um, and it's set in two wellness retreats. So there's two timelines. And in the past, 2 years ago, you have Jenna, who goes to Gozo, which is an island off Malta, to go to a wellness retreat. She's a bit messed up. There's stuff that's gone on in her life, and she's hoping that it'll give her some clarity. Unfortunately, the wellness retreat goes really, really badly, and two people who take part in the sweat lodge experience die, and Jenna disappears. Then the man responsible for the retreat, the guru Tom Wade, gets sent to prison because of the deaths. And 2 years later, when he comes out, Fran, who is Jenna's older sister, she's 12 years older, she's kind of bullied by her mother into going to Tom's new retreat in Wales to find out what happened to Jenna. And Fran couldn't be less likely to be a retreat kind of person. She's quite abrasive, she's a little bit antisocial, she doesn't do hugging. So it's quite interesting, or at least I found it interesting, to put her into that kind of scenario.
Yeah. Great. So to give us a flavour of the book, you're going to read us an extract from it now. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just have a sip of water.
Yes. Yeah, I'm going to be doing the same with non-alcoholic beers. I swear, you know, don't drink when you're in charge of Zoom events. But so you're going to read us an extract from it, and for everyone out there, listen carefully, because we'll be asking a question based on Callie's reading, and we're actually, thanks so much to the publishers, going to be giving away a proof copy of your forthcoming book. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's the Guilty Couple.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and that's not published until June. And we've also got some runner-up prizes, some special book bundles, which are supplied by Avon. So pay attention, and I'm just going to disappear off screen and listen up.
Okey-doke. So I asked on Twitter whether people wanted me to read the first chapter or from a bit later on in the book, and by a narrow margin, the votes for a bit later on in the book won. So one sec. So I've chosen a passage where Fran goes whitewater rafting down a river in Snowdonia as part of her retreat. Apparently it's supposed to be communication. That's why they're all being made to do this, so they can communicate with each other as a group and survive the rapids. The dinghy isn't the only thing that lurches as it drops into the mass of swirling, churning water. Fran's stomach cannonballs between her lungs as she frantically paddles, beating the water with her oar as Evan roars, "Go, go, go, go!" As the dinghy tips to the right, it lifts Fran's side into the air, whilst Phoenix, Kate and Renata dip closer to the water. Phoenix squeals with excitement and paddles harder, while Kate, teeth gritted, repeatedly jabs her oar into the foam. Beside her, Renata, white-faced and bouncing on the edge of the inflatable, clutches her oar with one hand and grips the safety line with the other. "Keep paddling!" Evan yells above the roar of the river. "Everyone keep paddling!" The dinghy rights itself, slapping Fran and the others back onto the water. Something in her stomach, probably undercooked poached eggs, surges back up her esophagus, making her gag. But she dips her oar back into the river and drags it through the water. Her oar clashes with Caroline's, and there's a brief moment where they're entangled, but now isn't the time for apologies, and they wrangle their oars free. "Come on, guys, come on!" Evan shouts as the dinghy rocks from side to side, and a huge wave slaps up against the side of the dinghy, drenching Fran. "You come on," she shouts. "We're doing all the work." "Can't we do that trust game again? The one where you fall backwards on dry land?" Caroline asks, and everyone laughs. And then they're free, drifting gently down the river, with Evan guiding them between the rocks, as though the rapids were a terrible dream. "Oh, thank God." Fran slips off the edge of the dinghy into the belly of the boat. "I never want to do that again for as long as I live." This time it's Damien who laughs. "What?" She looks at him. We've got 2 more like that before we get to the end, and the next one's worse. You're kidding me. She looks at Evan, who grins. Come on, Geraldine, Kate says curtly. Sit back up. She seems to catch herself and softens her tone. Everyone finds their first rapid scary, but we made it through by working as a team. The next one won't be nearly as bad. As Fran hoists herself back up onto the side of the dinghy, she notices that Damien is smirking. At her hippo-like manoeuvre, or Kate's comment, she's not quite sure. Okay, guys, Evan says, his gaze fixed further down the river. We're about 30 seconds from hitting the next one. Steer round it, Fran says, as he angles the dinghy towards the small patch of brown swirling water further down the river. Only Caroline laughs. Here we go, Evan shouts. We're going to need some hardcore paddling, and when I shout hold on, right now, paddle. Fran does as she's told, ignoring the part of her brain that's screaming at her to lie flat on the floor and just hold on. The dinghy picks up speed, the river foaming ahead of them, rocks and low-hanging branches speeding past. Hold on, Evan shouts. Fran holds her oar beside her, the paddle pointing upwards, and weaves her fingers around the safety cord. She's barely got a grip when the dinghy lifts into the air, then slaps back down onto the river. A wave of water arcs over the front of the boat, drenching them all. Evan deftly weaves the dinghy around a large flat rock. The dinghy twists in the water, and they hurtle towards the far bank, but he deftly swerves it away before it hits. Back down the river they hurtle towards the churning water. 30 seconds ago, it looked unthreatening and surmountable. Up close, it looks like there's a monster caught beneath the surface, thrashing and twisting and churning the water into a violent, muddy vortex. Fran swears under her breath. The dinghy turns sideways. Paddle, Evan shouts. Paddle, paddle. The dinghy leaps and falls, and Fran fights for breath, inhaling in short, sharp bursts as wave after wave burst over the boat, battering her body and slapping her skin. She tries to paddle, but the river pulls at her oar, trying to yank it out of her hands. She's not aware of Caroline and Damien either side of her, or the 3 people opposite. She can't hear Evan. She can't hear anything other than the roar of the water and someone's scream. It's as though she's trapped in a dark, noisy void, hovering on the edge of life. It's terrifying, nauseating, and interminable. She just wants it to... The thought is obliterated as there is a slap, the thwack of a wave, and the dinghy tips violently to the left. Fran's right hand flies up into the air as she reaches for something, anything to latch herself onto, to stop herself from falling into the water. But there's nothing to grab, and the last thing she sees as she's hurled out of the boat and into the dark, churning water is Kate rising above her and her wide, horrified eyes.
That's great, thank you. And just in case, that's the cover of the book to look out for. Thank you so much. That's great. So I know you've said that you've only ever started one book where the character came first. And I think you said that was the accident when you're actually standing in line at a supermarket and they told you how the story was going to start. So how did the idea for Her Last Holiday come about?
It started with the whole wellness retreat thing, because it's something that I'm quite interested in, even though it's not something that I'd necessarily sign up for myself. And when I started doing a bit of research into wellness retreats, I watched a lot of Netflix documentaries, and they were largely about American men who had set themselves up as these gurus. And they were charismatic men who, you know, could talk their audience into anything. And I just thought, what a potentially dangerous place a retreat could be. You know, they're largely unregulated. The people who come up with them often kind of snatch different ideas from different cultures and put it together in a kind of bundle of, you know, wellness. And also they're so isolated, they can be so isolated that they're the perfect place for a crime to take place. Yeah. So that's where it started, really, with the idea of a crime taking place at a wellness retreat. And from there I started thinking about characters, and I really wanted to explore the idea of siblings being treated differently by their parents, and how that shapes you into the person that you become as an adult. Because you know, Fran was always the sort of the bad one, the naughty one, the one that kind of sort of stuck her heels in, whereas Jenna was always more biddable. She was like the good girl of the family. So to explore them as adults was also quite interesting to me.
Because, yeah, I mean, that's it, because the book is at its core about a missing, presumed dead, and possibly murdered woman. I don't think that's giving anything away.
No.
That's from the outset, we know that. And Fran, her sister, seeks to find out what's happened, but theirs is from the outset something of a fractured relationship, isn't it? And Fran is not, dare I say, the typical glamorous male or female character that you might get. In the way that she's introduced, and she's got issues herself, and so on. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it was like writing Fran is that sort of character.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. I've written what I would call a lot of every woman type characters, particularly in my earlier books, mothers or university graduates. And it probably started with Strangers, where Ursula, one of my main characters, is a kleptomaniac, and she's also 6'3" and quite socially awkward. And I really enjoyed writing her as a character because I felt like I had more to play with as an author. And so when I came up with the idea of Her Last Holiday, I didn't want to write a kind of straight every woman again. I didn't necessarily want Fran to be hugely likable or relatable. If anything, I wanted her to be a little bit prickly at first, and she undergoes an emotional arc, an emotional journey where she changes, and by the course of the end of the book, she's probably a better person. She's a more open person. And actually she was a really good counterpoint to writing Jenna, because Jenna is quite erratic and she's very emotional and she sort of lurches through life, whereas Fran's more sort of staid and solid. And I liked writing the contrast between the two sisters.
Yeah, and there was a certain irony, and again, no spoilers or anything, but the fact that this growth is happening almost despite her own feelings about a wellness retreat. You know, it's just despite herself that she's growing and learning about herself. So you've got this great, interesting central character, but there's a whole range of characters there, the main and the supporting characters. And I think certainly reading it, and I read it very quickly in a weekend, and I felt I got a real sense about a lot of them, often in a very economic amount of words. And I just wondered how much the setting of that, the well-being, and the fact that they are introducing themselves and coming together, some of them know each other, some of them don't, how much that helped, or how much you used that in being able to develop this wider range of characters.
Yeah, it was equally as enjoyable coming up with the supporting cast, because if you're going to a wellness retreat, there's something wrong with your life, I think, that you want fixed, whether it's a health issue or a psychological issue or something that happened in your past. There's something where you feel the need to get fixed. So when I came up with the sort of supporting cast, I had to think quite a lot about what had happened in their lives that had brought them to the wellness retreat themselves. And that was good fun. I like writing broken people, and there's certainly broken people in the cast. And as you said, a lot of them were at the original retreat where Jenna disappeared. And when Fran goes to the new retreat in Wales, that cast is there again. So it also gives you a group of suspects. Yes. And the thing I enjoyed doing was working out why they may have harmed Jenna, each one of them, what reason each of them could have had. And that was good fun.
And you have a wonderful couple of characters in Tom, the self-help guru, and Kate is, well, let's say, business partner. Um, and I think that what you were saying earlier about the Netflix series and the way you play with those traditional proprietors or gurus within that was really interesting. But I was just wondering, did you try any courses yourself, or was it Netflix research?
Well, it's interesting what you say about Kate and Tom, because I almost deliberately did the opposite of the Netflix documentaries I watched, where the man was a real alpha. And I wanted to make Tom a beta man, more of a sort of blown around with the wind kind of man, and for Kate to be the power behind the throne. I kind of saw her as a bit of a Lady Macbeth, where she was sort of, you know, playing the puppets and manipulating Tom into getting what she wanted to achieve. I've written a book about a cult before, which was The Lie, and the cult leader in that, Isaac, is very much in control. So I wanted to write a different kind of character for Tom, where he's not really in control. But in terms of the research, yeah, so there was a fair amount of Netflix watching, but equally I'd been on two. Well, one was a Buddhist retreat when I was in my 20s, and a friend and I both thought that we were going to get away for a weekend, have a nice relax, and actually it felt a little cultish in the rules and regulations, the fact we were very sleep deprived, the fact we weren't able to eat until we'd meditated. We weren't allowed to listen to the radio, so there was no contact with the outside world. And you couldn't go and sit on your own for more than 5 minutes until one of the staff would come and sit with you and try and convince you to come to meetings back in Brighton. And I found that all very pressured. I mean, no offense to Buddhists, I'm sure there's some lovely retreats, but it had a weird cultish vibe to it. And also I ended up on what was a holistic retreat on a Greek island, when I was supposed to be going on a writing retreat on the same island, but there weren't enough people. So they said they'd carry on the course, but we had to choose the holistic retreat to do it. And it involved, you know, things like expressive dance and life coaching and various getting to know you scenarios where you'd have to walk around a stone circle and hug people and give them a compliment. And it was all very, very much not me. Luckily, I met a group of sort of rebels like me who found the whole thing hilarious. But it, you know, it's given me some great content for books over the years. just the whole feeling of the place. It's very unlike real life. Yeah,
great. Okay, so we're going to introduce our first guest this evening, Mark Edwards. Mark's novels include The Devil's Work, The Lucky Ones, In Her Shadow, Here to Stay, The House Guest, and The Hollows. In 2019, Mark won the Cat and Mouse Award for Most Elusive Villain at the Dead Good Reader Awards for Last of the Magpies. So, Mark, are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hi,
Wolverhampton calling. How is everyone? I have the scores from the Wolverhampton jury.
I think you have a question for Callie, Mark. Is that right?
Am I only allowed to ask one?
No, you're okay. More than welcome to fill the rest of the evening.
Okay.
We've got half hour to go.
Well, my first question is, Callie, how excited were you when you heard that Jason Momoa was getting divorced?
It was like a dream come true, Mark. I actually forwarded it to my partner Chris, the news article, and went, bye then, I'll always love you. He went, I bet Jason Momoa doesn't do the washing and clean the kitchen tiles.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were the first person I thought of when I saw the news.
Not that I'm obsessive about Jason Momoa.
I'm sure if people heard that, well, Lana Del Rey's not married, but people probably think about me when they hear about Lana, so...
Yeah, the clue might be in the cardboard figure behind you, Mark.
Yeah. Have you got a cardboard Jason figure?
I don't. Chris did give me a Jason Momoa calendar, and I did get a Jason Momoa mug for Christmas from my Secret Santa. So
Okay, all right. Well, let's moving swiftly on. So I've got two questions. One is about music. I've heard that you often write to film soundtracks. Is that right?
yeah, that's true. I've been doing this for years now. I'll often choose a film soundtrack, and it has to have no lyrics because I can't write with lyrics, that kind of matches the mood of the scene that I'm writing. Typically, I use the soundtrack to In Time, which is a Justin Timberlake sci-fi film,
Oh, right.
which
Okay.
apparently is not very good. I can't remember if I've seen it or not, but
Yeah.
the beats of the music, the tempo, and the tension work for writing psych thrillers, or at least
Okay.
writing what I write. And it's almost become a little Pavlovian in that when I start to play it, I sort of feel the urge to start writing. But I'm really open to suggestions. So author Barnaby Walters, he suggested the Rambo Last Blood soundtrack.
Right.
And I just thought, oh, Rambo, really? But
Yeah.
actually, it's really good. So I wrote a lot of the Guilty Party, the new book, to the Rambo soundtrack, and
That's so funny.
Dark Knight. Do you listen to music when you write?
Yeah, I have music on all the time, but I do listen to some soundtracks. The Neon Demon is a really good one. It's very
I didn't know
creepy
that.
and quite electronic and creepy, and the Drive soundtrack is very good as well.
Oh, okay.
But I mainly listen to music with vocals in it. It's fine.
Do you not find yourself like singing along in your head, like?
No, if I'm really into the music, it just fades into the background. I don't even notice it there.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I wouldn't be able to listen to rap or something like that, but and it has to be not too intrusive.
Yeah.
I was actually, sorry, I was just going to butt in, but I was having this conversation with Sarah Vaughan, and she was saying she can't write to anything that's got lyrics. So I actually created a Spotify list of the instrumentals that I like to listen to when writing. And the Miller's Crossing soundtrack is fantastic. And,
nice.
And also Ry Cooder. I really like listening to Ry Cooder, Paris, Texas, and that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Oh, too noisy.
I'll check those out. Remind me later, Simon, and I'll have a look.
I'll send you the Spotify list I made up. So.
Yeah,
sorry, Mark, did you have another question?
Oh yeah, sorry. So this is a slightly complicated question, but so every year, I feel like this has been going on for years. I kind of watch you're very, very open on social media with your writing progress and your process. So you'll start off by saying, okay, well, I've just started planning the new book, and you'll show like the charts of Post-its up on the walls and all the graphs that you're creating. And then you'll kind of record how many words you've written. And so you can, as an observer, we can follow the whole journey through you writing a book. And it happens every year. It's almost like you've got Valentine's Day, Easter, the summer holidays, Christmas. You can kind of mark off the year in Callie's progress through her
Become
book.
an event.
And there's always a point where it seems like you're in total agony and despair, and then you reach the end. And so as a writer and someone who knows you, I find it really fascinating. But I wonder why you do it and kind of what you get out of it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, I can't remember when I started doing it. I definitely know I did it in lockdown because it was a bit like I needed that camaraderie of other people who were trying to write, and we were just stuck in our houses. And so I started doing a writing in lockdown hashtag on Instagram, and loads of people seem to like that and seem to follow it. But I found that doing that was too prohibitive, the word count, because some days or some weeks my word count would be terrible because I'd spend a lot of time thinking or trying to rework things on my whiteboard. But in terms of charting it, I I think maybe it's partly because I'm like, what else am I going to talk to Instagram about?
Yeah.
You know, I don't go on lovely foreign holidays, or
Yeah.
you know, I don't go many fancy restaurants and take photos of my food. What I do is spend 90% of my time in this one room, either thinking about writing or just faffing around on social media.
Yeah.
But you're right, it is, and it's quite interesting to look back on, to see the process, and how long it takes, and when I reach that bit where I'm like, I hate this, and then I'll go quiet when I'm in that final stretch. When I'm near the end, I'll probably not post anything, because then I'm really locked into the book. But yeah.
I wondered if you were, I thought it might be about creating content, but I wondered if it was that you were trying to demystify the process for non-writers, because I think people don't really have an idea of what goes into writing a book, or they might have completely wrong ideas. But seeing writers like you kind of out there showing people what it's actually like, and all the work that goes into it, and all the different stages, it kind of shows how hard it is to write a book.
Yeah, I think there is a part of that, because I like to be very honest on social media about the ups and downs of the career as well. Because, you know, when did you first get published? Was it 2008, 2007?
2012, yeah.
I first got published in 2009, and there wasn't that much information online about the truth about having a career as an author. And a lot of stuff came as a shock to me. And I kind of imagined once I got published, there would be this sort of glossy, shiny utopia where I would live happily for the rest of my life, because I'd finally achieved I finally achieved my dream. But there are lots of ups and downs, and you know, there are wonderful moments, you know, like publication day, but there's also moments of disappointment and stuff as well. And I want people to, especially aspiring authors, to have realistic expectations that nobody's career just, you know, solidly goes up like that. We all have like a, you know, a little wibble, and sometimes we get blocked, and sometimes we write a book that we have to trash, and sometimes, well, often we are filled with self-doubt multiple times in the process of writing a book. Like, what would you, if you could go back and talk to pre-2012 Mark Edwards, what would you tell yourself?
I suppose it would be that getting published is just the start. Getting that first deal is just the first step. Because I was so obsessed with getting a book deal for so long, and when it happened, I thought, like you said, it's all going to be perfect and wonderful. My dreams have come true, and that's just the beginning. Because then you got to do another book and another book and another book, and you got to keep people interested. Because it's very easy to get people interested in you as a debut. It's sustaining that long career, especially doing what we do, writing standalones, not a series. I think we've made it even more challenging for ourselves. So yeah, I think it's great that you've been doing this so long, and you're still on that upward trajectory.
Well, let's hope so. I live in fear.
Yeah, no, you definitely are. And I like the fact that you kind of share all this stuff with your readers and your fellow writers.
Oh, well, I wanted to say to you, congratulations, because this year you hit 4 million sales. Is that right? Yeah, recently, yes. 4 million. And The Hollows is out now. Do you want to tell the readers what the next one's about and when it's coming out?
The next one is called No Place to Run. It's out in June the 21st, I think, which is actually Lana Del Rey's birthday, but that's a coincidence. Summer solstice, that's kind of relevant. It's another missing sister book like yours.
Oh, all the best people.
It's about a guy whose sister went missing on a trip to America a few years ago, and then a woman who's traveling on a train through the forests of California she sees a girl being chased through a clearing in the forest, and she thinks that she recognizes her and that it's this missing girl. So the brother, the main character, goes to California to search for her. And
nice.
and madness ensues.
Excellent. I'll look forward to it.
Excellent.
Great.
Well, thank you, and happy
Thank you.
publication day.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for coming on to chat.
Okay.
Thanks so
See you
much, Mark.
soon. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thanks a lot
Bye.
for joining us.
No worries.
And now let's introduce our second guest of tonight, Claire Douglas. So Claire has worked as a journalist for 15 years, writing features for women's magazines and national newspapers, but dreamed of being a novelist since the age of 7. She finally got her wish after winning the Marie Claire Debut Novel Award with her first novel, The Sisters, which was followed by Local Girl Missing, Last Seen Alive, Do Not Disturb, Then She Vanishes, and Just Like the Other Girls. Her latest novel, The Couple at Number 9, was a Sunday Times top 3 bestseller and a Kindle #1. So Claire, are you with us in Bath?
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Claire. Lovely to see you.
How are you?
We only saw each other on Monday, but here we are again.
How are you? Are you enjoying
I'm
your day?
good, thank you. I haven't had a drink yet. I'm on the coffee at the moment.
Are you? Caffeine?
Yes.
Nice enough. So, do I need to ask a question about... So I wanted to know... So I loved Her Last Holiday. I loved Fran and Jenna and Tom. I just wanted to know who you would choose to play the parts of them if it was made into a film or a Netflix series. Jason, maybe? Jason.
Yeah, I'd certainly go into Jason Momoa's spell if he was a guru. I don't know. This is a tricky one because I can't. So in my head, Fran is about a 40 to 50-year-old Judy Dench. And obviously Judy Dench is quite a bit older than that now. But so I can't think of an alternative because Judy Dench was in Notes on a Scandal.
Yes.
And she was so good in that role that I think if we could rewind time, she'd make a great Fran. Jenna, I think, would be someone like Emily Blunt, maybe. I think she could do a good Jenna. Tom, I'm not sure. I can kind of picture him in my mind, but he's sort of handsome but a bit dishevelled, bit rumpled. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I can always picture my characters, but I can't always match an actor. I think that's why you need a casting director, because they've got a much better idea.
We're getting some suggestions from the chat. Libby Carpenter suggests Olivia Colman.
Yes.
Oh yes, she'd be brilliant. Yeah, she would. That's a good call.
And Jill Batchelor suggests Miranda Hart, going a bit left field there.
Oh, okay.
Miranda Hart. She's funny. Yeah.
We've had a suggestion from Alexis Taft sorry, that's my Alexa going off in the background. Alexa suggests David Tennant. I'm guessing
David Tennant can do a really good bad guy. I saw him in something recently. He was
Jessica
Jones. Kind of dark, stalkery.
Jessica Jones.
What was
Was
it?
it the Jessica Jones on Marvel?
No,
on Netflix?
it was a BBC or ITV drama.
Was it the Des, when he played Des?
Yes.
Was it the one where he played Des Nielsen, was that it?
Oh, he did that. He did that really well as well. It was another one.
He also did one, Bad Samaritan.
That's the one, I think.
Yes.
That's the one I've seen, I think,
with the guy out of Misfits who was breaking into his house, and he was a right wronging.
Yes.
And then we've got River Scott Tyler is saying our man Jason Momoa is Isaac in The Lie.
Yes, that would be very good casting. Yes, definitely.
Butt back out and let you carry on.
So what about you, Claire, with The Couple at Number 9, which, congratulations, it has done phenomenally well.
Thank you.
It's been in the Amazon top 100 in books and ebook for months, it feels like.
It's
really chiming with readers. Who would you cast in that?
Oh, see, I don't know. So I think Olivia Colman, maybe as Lorna, who
I think she could be in everything. She could be everything.
She's just so good. She plays that sort of like, the sort of like 40-year-old sort of like character.
Yes.
But it is hard though, isn't it? Because for my younger character, she's quite young, she's only like 24, so it's quite hard to think of a sort of 24-year-old, who would play her. So I don't know about her.
Yeah.
And then and Tom, and also I've got Tom in mind, and he's young. So it's like, so the younger actors and actresses, I'm not quite sure about it. I seem to know the sort of older ones.
I think in British TV as well, like it may be easy to think of younger actors and actresses in the States.
Yes.
But to think of British is harder unless you start thinking soaps, which I guess is where you see a lot of them.
Yes, actually that's true. But and it's quite hard to think of someone in their sort of like early 20s.
Well, here we go. We're getting suggestions for you as well. We're
Jodie
getting
Comer. I love her.
All the Lilies. We're getting Lily James, Lily Collins. So pick your Lily.
I love Lily Collins.
Excellent. Any more questions, Claire?
I'd also wanted to ask, just one more, sorry, about your locations in your books. So you have Gozo in Her Last Holiday, and obviously in The Lie. Is it Tibet in The Lie? Where they go?
Nepal.
So did you like, choose these places because you've been to them already, or do you go there and think, I'm going to go to these places and then write a book there? So what made you decide to choose those places?
Yeah, so with The Lie, I'd already been, so I wrote The Lie in 2013, 2014, and I'd already been to Nepal in 2006 and trekked up the Annapurna range. So that just was an easy kind of, I need somewhere where people can get stuck up a mountain and there's a monsoon, they can't escape. So that was just perfect. With Her Last Holiday, I wanted the retreat that Jenna goes on to be somewhere quite isolated. You can get off, but it's not necessarily easy to get off. And so I thought about various different British islands, and then I just thought, no, because there's something too safe about being on a British island, because you still feel home even though you're not home. Although that said, I did use the Isle of Run in Sleep to have some people abandoned there. So I remembered Gozo because some school friends had been there on a holiday after we left sixth form, and they talked about it so much, and I just got a bit curious, so I did a bit of Googling, and I thought this looks perfect because there's a ferry that separates it from Malta. If the ferry's not running or it's in between ferries, you're stuck. So I went to Gozo with a friend of mine at the end of December 2019. So I managed to do my research just before lockdown, which was fortunate. But it's perfect. I mean, some of my books, like The Island, is set in Thailand, which is a young adult book. I've never been to Thailand, and I couldn't go to Thailand because I wrote that during lockdown. But it helps so much more if you can go there, because you can take notes. And so my first impressions of Malta, as we drove in the taxi from the airport to the ferry to go to Gozo, were to become Jenna's first impressions, the things that I saw. And then when I stayed in our hotel in Tarsenk in Gozo, and we went for a walk around the back of the hotel towards the edge of the cliff, I saw a stone circle, a partial stone circle, and it was probably a shepherd's hut that had fallen down or something. But I thought, that's where I'm going to put the sweat lodge, and then that's the cliff where Jenna's going to disappear and just her flip-flops are left behind. And you could feel the wind and smell the smells, and so I was just recording things. So yes, I would love to do more of that sort of thing. The Guilty Couple was obviously written when we weren't traveling very much, so that's in London. So I just used my memories of London to write The Guilty Couple. How about you? What sort of locations do you use in your books? And
So
other places
I've used
you've visited?
Yeah, so I've used Thailand quite a few times because I've been to Thailand.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Thailand again. But I know I haven't actually, I think Thailand is probably, I've used Thailand twice. And then the rest of the time, they're normally like little like villages or like towns, or I probably make quite a lot of mine up. So like Old Cliff on Sea, which was Local Gone Missing, that was basically Weston-super-Mare, but I just changed the title.
Nice.
So that's what I do. I do quite like a seaside place. I don't know why, like a rundown seaside place, like Next Season is always my favourite. But I do tend to do sort of similar in all my books, the same type of small towns, you know, and basically make up the names of them. But I'd quite like to do something on a island like what you did, though. But quite a good excuse to go somewhere nice.
Where is your new book set? The next one that's coming out.
So that's set in a place I've made up again called Staffbury, but it's basically Avebury, which is where the standing stones are. I don't know if you've been there. It's sort of like in Wiltshire way, sort of near Swindon.
Okay. Is it near Glastonbury? No.
Well, my sense of direction isn't great, but
as I know, having been in the car with you,
it probably is. You know what my sense of direction is like. So it could be, but I think I know it's in Wiltshire. We went there the other day actually to have another little scan around. But yeah, it's a really atmospheric place. It's quite sort of it's reportedly supposed to have a haunted sort of haunted inn there. So it's got like lots of like folklore and stuff like that. So it's quite a good place to get your creative juices flowing. Yeah, so it's basically based there, but it's called Staffbury, not Avebury.
And do you have a setting for the a title for the next book? Has it been?
No.
Okay.
No. So I didn't even this time I didn't even have a working title because I was just like they always get changed. So I was like, oh, do you know what? I'm just not gonna. So we've got 2 titles, but we can't decide because one of the titles is quite long and I think it looked too long on the cover. So we're still going back and forth with that.
So we can just say the next Claire Douglas book is out in September. To be titled.
Yes.
Right?
To be titled and covered.
Thanks so much, Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Thank you. And you. Bye.
Thank you. Just coming back to a point Claire raised there, I think you edited out a scene from the Capitol exploring the Citadel within the new book. Is that right? I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit, and then we'll go to we've got a few audience questions, but I was just curious as to whether you could talk a little bit about how much a book like Her Last Holiday changes from first to final draft in terms of word count or plot or things like that, which are, you know, scenes that you maybe really enjoy writing, but just think, yeah, it's got to go.
Yeah, I'm quite a sort of edit as you go type writer. So I write quite slowly, but I write quite carefully, and I'll often hit a stumbling block in the plot, and then I will just stop writing until I've overcome that, and then I will move forward. And then if that means that something earlier is kind of no longer working, I'll have to fix that before I can move forward. I don't know if it's like the perfectionist in me, but I can't stand if something is wrong earlier on. It has to flow for me to be able to continue to the end. So as a result, I don't really do multiple drafts. Right. I'll finish the first draft, then I'll read it through, and I will look for anything that slows the pace or anything that's become redundant, to the plot or the theme or whatever. And actually in Her Last Holiday, I had a brilliant, I thought, scene. It's set in the Citadel in Victoria, in Gozo, where I'd been there, I described it, I think I completely captured the mood of it, but I think it slowed the pace too much. There was too much introspection from Jenna, and it didn't really move the plot along. So I had to just cut it, and I'm quite good at cutting. I'm quite ruthless. I'll often, say I write a 90,000 word draft, it'll probably be somewhere around 78,000 by the time I send it to my editor. And then my editor will find things that I need to put back in. So it'll go back up again in word count then. Yeah. But even just now with The Guilty Couple, I had the copy edits through, and afterwards I read the whole thing aloud, and any repetition that I found or any kind of clumsy sentences I'd rewrite. And as a result, even at that stage, I lost like 1,500 words just by cutting it. Yeah. But I like that. I'd rather overwrite and cut than underwrite and fill, I think.
Yes, yeah, great. Okay, we'll go to a few questions. We've actually got 5 minutes left. Are you okay to run a little bit over?
Yes, absolutely. And you
Great.
need to announce the winners as well, don't you?
We've got to announce the questions.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Basically, what we'll do is we'll ask the question at the end of the show, and you'll have until midnight tonight to email. We'll put the email address up that people can email their answers through to, and then we'll select a couple at random. So you've got till midnight tonight to rush out, buy the book, read it. If you missed the answer in the reading. So the first question is from Stuart Cummings. I'd like to ask if Callie thinks Fran might ever make another appearance in one of her novels. She's such a great character.
Oh, it's always the thing, like as Mark Edwards said, we write standalone books. So you write a book, then you leave the characters behind, and you write a new book with new characters. And it is hard to leave the characters behind. Fran is one of my favourite characters that I've written, but I think, without giving too much away, I think there's probably not much further that I could go with Fran in terms of what had happened to her. And Ursula in Strangers, I really missed when I'd finished writing that book as well. The only book I think potentially where I could write another book is The Guilty Couple, the next one. Because the way it's left at the end, you almost want to know what would happen now. That's not to say that there isn't a closed ending. There's very much a closed ending, but there is room for characters to go on and do more. But well, I'll have to see what you all think after you've read it.
Well, it kind of follows on. Rachel Garner asks, would you ever write a series? So you've kind of half answered that there, I think. But
with the right characters, then yes, I would. Yeah.
Keith Young asks, how long do you think and plan before you actually start writing?
Months. I probably think once I've got an idea that I'm excited by, and that my agent and editor have kind of given the thumbs up to. Actually, sometimes even before I give it to them, I need to do a bit of thinking. So I may well think for about 6 weeks, maybe reading around it a bit, watching some stuff. And then I will probably start to plot and plan. And so altogether, I'd probably say 3 months. Ideally, I'd like to spend 3 months thinking, plotting and planning, and then write the first draft in about 5 months.
And you are a plotter. And what does your research and thinking look like before you hit the first key? Do you have whiteboards and string theory and
the first kind of thing that I think about? So I'll start with a what if, then it'll be what does the main character want, what's their goal, what are their flaws, how do they change over the course of the novel, and once I've kind of who's the antagonist, most importantly. And once I've got that, I've got a whiteboard just here, and it's split into the 4-act structure. In fact, the pen I used to write on has been on there so long now it's become permanent, so I've got a permanent 4-act structure. And then I use coloured index cards. So I'll either use one colour for a character, or if there's multiple characters, different colours, or if it's different threads, different colours. And I plot out the sequence climaxes, but there's lots of spaces in between. I've tried doing outlines before I write a book, and it takes some of the magic away for me of reaching those little impasses where you're like, what happens now? And that's when the magic happens, I think. And you start to know the characters and you suddenly have ideas.
It's that bit where you're doing something and suddenly it hits you and you go, I've got to get back and get this down. Yeah,
it's exciting. Those moments are what makes writing fun.
McAngel asks, would you recommend unpublished authors attend festivals to meet and be inspired by?
Yeah, I would. When I was writing The Accident, when I was on maternity leave, which was my first psych thriller, I went to Crime Fest in Bristol. I'm based in Bristol. And I really enjoyed listening to published authors talking about their books. I don't think you can expect to learn anything necessarily unless you're going to some kind of convention. Like Bloody Scotland has a masterclass, for example. So you could, if you went to that, I think you'd find that hugely useful. I've taught that, and I've also taught Glasgow. I did a masterclass on writing a psych thriller. So if you can find a festival, oh, and Harrogate does Creative Thursday, something. So there's plenty of opportunities. So I would recommend go to one of those masterclasses and then just sit in on some panels, because even as a published author, watching a panel, something somebody says might spark something in me. Not necessarily, you know, oh, I'm going to write something like that, but just listening to other people be passionate about their books inspires you. So yes, absolutely.
And if I was a hacky marketing sort of person, I'd probably mention Bay Tales Live happening here in February, but I'm not. So I won't.
Also, watch Bay Tales.
Doing our first physical event in February.
Oh, exciting.
Madeline asks, what was your favourite book to write?
Oh, I would probably say The Fear, because I think it just came out easier, quicker. Some books I'm very proud of, but they were hard work. And The Fear, because it's a kind of revenge novel, and actually The Guilty Couple's a little bit of a revenge novel as well. So there were a lot of scenes that I really enjoyed writing. But the Fear had, you know, without too much of a spoiler, somebody gets locked in a cage, you know, and that kind of thing is great fun to write.
Great, thank you. Callie, out of all of your characters, which would you say is like you?
Oh, that's a horrible question. They're all a little bit like me, I think. I think there's sort of socially awkward bits of Fran and Ursula are very me. Being tall and a bit awkward, like Ursula, is also me. But then there's the mothery bit in me. I've got a 10-year-old son, so that's very much in Claire in The Missing, and also in my first character who's also a mother in The Accident. So there's a little bit of me in all of them, which is why when people say that the main character's annoying, I can't help but take it personally.
Yes. And Linda Hill asks, is there another person's book that you wish you'd written? If so, who? Which one?
Oh, there's loads. There's loads. Most recently, it's 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard, because the plotting is just superb. Also, After You'd Gone by Maggie O'Farrell, because I felt emotionally winded for days after I'd read that book, and I thought to have that effect, for those words to have that effect on me physically, where I was just like, oh, that's incredible talent. Yes, Gone Girl as well, for its voice, and it's just, oh, it was just amazing how different Gone Girl was from anything else out there. That was like, oh, I wish I'd written that.
Yes. Duncan Donna Michelle writes, when did you first start writing and realize it was your thing, your passion? When did you first think this is what I want to do?
I was 8. I was a massive reader, loved Enid Blyton, particularly The Magic Faraway Tree, which really fired my imagination. And I started to write little books and do illustrations. And I you know, people who've watched interviews with me before will know that I actually sent them away to publishers and got rejected. I think finally at the age of 11, I gave up, and I didn't try again till I was 33. So I got there in the end.
Do you have a, Steve Rogers asked, did you always want to be a writer, which I think you've answered, and do you have a favourite author?
My favourite author is probably Margaret Atwood. I can't read a Margaret Atwood book when I'm writing, because her voice is so distinct that I almost try and mimic it, which would do a terrible disservice to her. But I love her intelligence and her humour and the darkness in her books, and she's just so eminently readable. I'm a massive fan.
One more question we've got time for. Rose Cullen asks, do you have a trusted reader before submitting to a publisher, to your publisher?
No, I don't. I kind of wish I did, because I literally finish my sort of second draft and I send it to my agent and my editor at the same time, and no one else has read it. And I think that probably makes it more fearful of a fearful experience, because I've only got my view to go on. I do think sometimes that it would be good to have a beta reader, because then people might point out issues in the plot or with the characters before it goes to my editor. But I just leave everything to the last minute. So I'm literally writing until the last second often, or reading it until the last second, and then it's deadline day, send. So there's no time.
Well, we're getting several volunteers in the chat room if you ever decide that you do want to go for one. So so you've got this huge long breathing space now, where presumably now that this book's out and the next, you're just doing nothing. I'm guessing at the minute, is it? Lying back watching Netflix. What's happening now?
I wish. So I've got 6 months now until the Guilty Couple comes out in hardback and ebook, and I have actually asked for a bit longer to write book 10. Essentially it'll be crime book 10. So my delivery date is January next year, because I wanted to. Sometimes I feel like I have to rush the thinking part of the process and just grab at the first idea that I think works. And I just wanted to give myself some more time this time around to explore some different ideas. I've already got in my phone, I've already got 3 different ideas potentially for book 10. But I want to just give myself the chance to maybe find something that little bit special. Right. So once sort of this week and next week's all over with promotion for Her Last Holiday, I've got a subscription to National Theatre at home, and I'm going to watch loads of plays. Because I think with Netflix and stuff, you can be very passive in your enjoyment of it, whereas there's something about plays that makes me think differently or feel differently. Yes. And I think that's what I need, that kind of spark. I'd also love to travel a bit, because, you know, even just going to Iceland Noir in November, I got a short story out of that. So if I could travel somewhere, I think it might help inspire me. And hopefully I'll have an idea by at least April, because I really need to start writing then.
Great. Okay, so competition question. We're thrilled to be able to offer one lucky winner the proof copy of The Guilty Couple, which is, as we've said, isn't available until June. And in addition, Avon have put together 3 bundles of books for runners-up. So to be in with a chance, the question is, what trust game does Caroline suggest they play instead as they're paddling towards the rapids? So what trust game is it that Caroline suggests they play instead as they're paddling towards the rapids? Don't put it in the chat room, whatever you do, or you're giving everyone else the answer as well. But if you think you know, please send your answers with the subject line, Her Last Holiday, to baytales20@gmail.com. Now, we'll put a goodbye slide up in just a moment, and you'll see that email again. So it'll be up there. Please get your entries in by midnight tonight, and we'll select the winners at random. And I think that's us done. I'd like to thank, well, Mark and Claire. I'd also like to thank Nikki Black, who's been in the background, just making sure everyone behaves in the chat room, which, of course, as always, everyone has done impeccably. But Callie, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and congratulations on your pub day. And I'm sure the paperback will be as big a success as all of your other books.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Nikki. And thanks so much, Claire and Mark, and for everybody that's tuned in to watch this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.